What happens when Hollywood stars bear it all? Not for shock, but for story. From career-defining moments to bold artistic choices, these actresses didn't just get naked on screen, they transformed the meaning of vulnerability and power in film. So, was it brave, bold, or just too far? Let's dive into the roles that left nothing to the imagination. Demi Moore, Substance, 2024. Demi Moore's return to acting in Substance was not merely an act of revirement, it was a cinematic reckoning. For her 61st birthday, Moore decided to go completely naked in a number of emotionally raw scenes, tackling the very things Hollywood prefers to conceal: aging, insecurity, and the brittleness of fame. In Substance, she stars as Elizabeth Spark, a faded film star fighting addiction, body image disorders, and the stinging ebbing of her career. It's a performance that feels unsettlingly close to home, and that's precisely why it resonates. The nudity in Substance isn't glamorous. It's not filtered, airbrushed, or sexualized. It's stark, quiet, and almost painful. One particular scene shows Demi's character standing nude in front of a mirror, examining the stretch marks, the sagging skin, the years etched onto her body. There's no dramatic music, no dialogue, just silence and reflection. It's an image few major actresses would dare attempt, especially those over 60. But Demi Moore isn't just any actress. This performance is a strong criticism of the cult of youth in the movie world. It defies Hollywood's unwritten rule: when women pass their prime, they vanish. Rather, Moore returned in the most raw state imaginable. During interviews, Moore clarified that the nudity was not intended to be shock value or for attention. "I didn't want it to be beautiful. I wanted it to be real," she stated. "This woman is cracking, mentally, physically. I had to demonstrate that, without euphemizing." Critics admired her courage, calling Substance one of the most honest performances of her career. But it also ignited controversy. Was this liberating, or was it too far? Was she exposing herself, or taking advantage? Those are questions that echo the ones her character poses throughout the film. Who am I, without my looks, without my fame, without my clothes? This isn't the first time Moore has had to cope with nudity. She famously stripped for Striptease, 1996, and posed pregnant and naked for Vanity Fair. But Substance was something different. It wasn't about seduction, it was about surrender. And that's what makes it unforgettable. In a time when older women are discarded or surgically altered to obscurity, Moore's performance was revolutionary. She presented us with a life-worn body, a regret-seared soul, and a star taking back her strength in vulnerability. It was not merely a nude scene, but an exercise in cinematic truth, one that challenged people to engage with their own distaste for aging and imperfection. In Substance, Demi Moore wasn't merely nude on screen, she was brave. And in doing that, she reminded Hollywood, and all of us, that actual beauty exists in what we're willing to share. Kate Winslet, Jude, 1996, and The Reader, 2008. When nudity in film comes to mind with elegance, depth, and intent, Kate Winslet is among the most courageous actresses of her generation. Whereas most celebrities view on-screen nudity as forbidden or career peril, Winslet has repeatedly employed it as an expression of her character's reality, particularly in Jude and The Reader, two deeply emotionally charged films in which her performances were as exposed as her vulnerability. Jude, 1996. In Jude, Winslet stars as Sue Bridehead, a fiercely independent Victorian woman who breaks from the conventions of society to pursue an illicit affair with her cousin, Jude Fawley, played by Christopher Eccleston. The film is an adaptation of Thomas Hardy's novel, Jude the Obscure, and it's heavy on the class struggle, religious hypocrisy, and repression. Winslet's nudity in Jude is not seduction, it's freedom. Her character peels off not only layers of clothes, but centuries of expectation. A specific scene, in which Sue and Jude have sex in a modest cottage, is filmed with minimal lighting and minimal vanity. It retains the rawness of two individuals yearning to love openly in a world that refuses to let them. "I wanted to show a woman who was unafraid of her own body," Winslet once said about the role. Sue was defying everything expected of her, including how she was supposed to behave sexually. This wasn't a glossy romance, it was a tragedy, and her performance remains one of the most emotionally naked of her early career. The Reader, 2008. A decade and a half on from her last role involving nude scenes, Winslet came back to nudity motivated by emotion in The Reader, which earned her the Oscar for Best Actress. She played Hannah Schmitz, an ex-concentration camp guard who has an illicit affair with an adolescent boy in post-World War II Germany. In this movie, the nudity is fraught and ethically charged. Hannah's body is the terrain of intimacy and concealment, particularly in the shower scenes with Michael, David Cross. But unlike Jude, these sequences are nuanced with ethical unease. Hannah is not merely a vulnerable woman. She's an individual with a troubled, secret past. The nudity in The Reader was needed, Winslet explained, because it wasn't about sex. It was about power, shame, control, and intimacy. Instead of protecting the audience from the uncomfortably true nature of the relationship, Winslet faces it head-on. Her posture, her immobility, her cold glares all speak a language beyond words. She doesn't romanticize, she lays bare. Critics acclaimed her for breaking rules not for sensationalism, but for drama. She wasn't naked to shock. She was naked to change. With these performances, Winslet demonstrated that nudity can be art, character development, and emotional authenticity. She rewrote the rules on what it is to be an actress, willing to risk everything on the line: body, soul, and reputation. Sharon Stone, Basic Instinct, 1992. When it comes to the most talked about nude scene in film history, Sharon Stone in Basic Instinct is in a league of her own. Open in 1992, Basic Instinct wasn't merely a box office smash, it was a cultural shockwave. Directed by Paul Verhoeven and written by Joe Esterhazy, the erotic thriller centers on Detective Nick Curran, Michael Douglas, as he probes the enigmatic and erotic Catherine Trammell, a crime novelist suspected of being a murderer. But what launched the movie, and Sharon Stone, into immediate legend was one scene: the interrogation room. There, in now notorious fashion, Catherine calmly crosses and uncrosses her legs in front of a police station full of cops, showing she's not wearing any underwear. The camera picks it all up in a fraction of a second, and that second became an earthquake of cultural impact. It was the creation of a new type of femme fatale, wrote one critic. Dangerous, smart, and completely in charge. Stone's nudity wasn't exploitative, it was calculated. Catherine Trammell employs her body like a magician uses misdirection to get power, change the subject, and keep one step ahead. In that moment, she outmaneuvers everyone, and the audience is as hypnotized as the detectives in the room. But off camera, things become increasingly complex. Stone afterwards asserted that she had no idea the exploitative shot would be seen in the final edit. In her memoir, The Beauty of Living Twice, she said she had been assured the scene would not reveal anything explicit, and only caught on when she saw the movie with a full room of executives. "I hit Verhoeven in the face and walked out," she revealed. "I felt betrayed." Verhoeven has consistently maintained that he did not deceive her, that she knew what was happening. The scandal ignited debate about consent, exploitation, and power games within Hollywood, particularly during scenes where nudity is involved. In spite of the theatrics, the effect was undeniable. Stone's acting, sexy, cold, brilliant, elevated her to global icon overnight. She became the face of erotic thrillers and sexually powerful roles. But that came at a cost. For years, she was stuck in a typecast and struggled to escape the Catherine Trammell image. Still, Stone rode it out, taking back ownership of her career. "I was nobody prior to that scene," she claimed, "and all of a sudden, everybody in the world was paying attention to me." Her Basic Instinct performance wasn't merely about nudity. It was about upending the playbook on how female sexuality could be portrayed on the big screen. Catherine wasn't a victim. She was the one with the gun, literally and figuratively. To this day, Basic Instinct is one of the most incendiary films ever produced, and Sharon Stone's unflinching performance continues to stimulate controversy, admiration, and fascination. She did not merely transgress rules, she remade them. Margot Robbie, The Wolf of Wall Street, 2013. When Margot Robbie was shown completely naked in The Wolf of Wall Street, it wasn't merely a daring career choice, it was a statement. A then relatively new Australian actress, she shocked the world with her rendition of Naomi LaPaglia, the fiery, sensual, and fast-witted wife of Jordan Belfort, played by Leonardo DiCaprio. Her acting immediately put her in the limelight, and not only due to the nudity. Directed by Martin Scorsese, The Wolf of Wall Street is a frenetic, crazy spin through greed, drugs, and decadence. Naomi, aka the Duchess of Bay Ridge, is the sole character who can out-manipulate Jordan at his own game of self-indulgence and manipulation. Her body is part of her power, and nowhere is that more apparent than in her unforgettable nude scene. In a now classic moment, Naomi challenges Jordan in their daughter's nursery. She opens the door, wearing nothing but high heels. The camera dwells as she spreads her legs, taunting him, and us, with both sensuality and power. It's not about sex, it's about control. The nudity wasn't just there to be provocative, Robbie explained. It was Naomi's weapon. She knew how to use her body to get what she wanted. That distinction is crucial. In many films, nudity is used to objectify. But in The Wolf of Wall Street, Naomi uses it to assert her power. She's not a passive character. She's a force of nature. Nevertheless, the decision was not simple for Robbie. She afterward disclosed that she first misled her family, telling them the scene was going to be cut back by using CGI or a body double. However, she eventually chose to accept the role completely. "It was my first major role, and I knew I had to go whole hog. If I was going to do it, I had to commit 100%. And she did, and with a brilliance that stunned the world. Her performance was electric, and it brought her worldwide acclaim. But it also created a tidal wave of debate. Was she courageous, or was she coerced into exposing herself for a role? Could an upstart actress refuse to do a nude scene in a Scorsese film? Robbie was never evasive about what she did. She didn't feel exploited. She felt empowered. And that feeling of being empowered is what the performance was about. Naomi was supposed to be naked, physically and emotionally, she said. She had to convey strength, sensuality, and a sense of danger. Ever since The Wolf of Wall Street, Robbie has established herself as one of Hollywood's most underrated and admired actresses, from I, Tanya, to Barbie. It was, however, that scene in that movie that ignited the fire on her rocket of a career. It wasn't about revealing flesh. It was about revealing presence. And Robbie revealed to us that she had plenty enough to dominate Hollywood. Eva Green, The Dreamers, 2003. Eva Green's performance in The Dreamers isn't simply recalled for its nudity. It's recalled for its courage, its artistic integrity, and the emotional vulnerability she brought to the role. For some, it was a career-launching performance that took risks by combining sensuality, intelligence, and psychological complexity. Directed by Bernardo Bertolucci, The Dreamers takes place in 1968 Paris during student demonstrations, a moment of social unrest and revolution. It focuses on an American student, Matthew, who gets involved with a quirky and enigmatic French sibling pair, Isabelle Eva Green, and Theo. What starts as a mutual passion for film soon degrades into a bizarre, erotic, and passionate ménage à trois, all contained within the boundaries of their Parisian flat. Eva Green was just 22 when she played Isabelle, a character who is nude for much of the movie, many times unabashedly. But what makes The Dreamers different is the way that nudity here is employed not as encouragement, but as poetry. Isabelle is not sexualized within the way that mainstream culture tends to present nudity. Her nakedness is figurative, of freedom, of rebellion, and of tearing down social rules. The nudity in the film is emotional, Green explained in interviews. It's about being open, vulnerable, and bare of pretense, not only clothes. One of the hottestly debated scenes is Isabelle recreating a Queen Christina, 1933 moment, walking naked down the hallway with a detached, powerful sense of queenliness. In another, she and her brother Theo lie twisted with Matthew, the lines between family intimacy, love, and identity confusing in ways that make one both interested and disturbed. This was not a performance designed to make people feel at ease. It was one designed to invite contemplation, challenge mores, and test the boundaries of narrative filmmaking. Critics split. Some praised the film as a work of erotic art cinema mastery. Others criticized it for its explicitness, arguing it teetered on the brink of exploitation. But something was certain. Eva Green was not afraid. People said I was crazy or brave, she remembered. But I believed the story. I believed in Isabelle. The gamble worked. The Dreamers presented Green as a compelling figure, enigmatic, intelligent, and willing to expose herself emotionally and physically. But the movie had its cost. Green confirmed that she rejected roles thereafter because she did not want to be stereotyped as the naked girl. Nevertheless, her own career thrived. She went on to appear in Casino Royale, Penny Dreadful, 300, Rise of an Empire, and Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children, frequently depicting dark, complicated women with fire within and profound contradictions. In The Dreamers, Eva Green provided one of the bravest debut performances of the 21st century. She didn't merely drop her clothes. She stripped away layers of identity, repression, and innocence. It was art, it was rebellion, and it was unforgettable. Angelina Jolie, Gia, 1998. Before she was an Oscar winner, a humanitarian, and an action heroine, Angelina Jolie stunned the world with a bravely raw and emotionally bare performance in Gia, the HBO biopic of supermodel Gia Karangi, whose meteoric rise and ultimate downfall revealed the seamy underbelly of beauty, fame, and addiction. In this movie, Jolie doesn't simply show up nude. She embodies vulnerability, rebellion, and self-destruction with a ferocity few actresses have come anywhere close to. Gia recounts the real-life story of Karangi, one of the original supermodels of the late 70s and early 80s, who became an overnight sensation, but soon fell prey to drug addiction and died of AIDS complications at the tender age of 26. Jolie conveys not just Gia's sensuality, but also her tragedy. And her numerous nude scenes are never there for gratuitous shock or for seduction. They're intimate, heartbreaking, and frequently emotionally savage. In a particular scene, Gia strips naked in front of a mirror, bruised and stoned, outlining the bruises on her body. There is no glamorizing here, only stark human desperation. Another scene has her nude in bed with her lover Linda, played by Elizabeth Mitchell, having a brief moment of humanity before getting lost in the isolation again. The nudity is not sexualized, it's realistic, symbolizing Gia's emotional breakdown and her desperate quest for identity and love. I wanted to do something honest, Jolie explained in interviews. Gia was someone who didn't know how to protect herself. She gave all of herself to people, physically and emotionally. Jolie's performance was so intense and real that it turned her into an overnight star. She won a Golden Globe and was lauded by critics, who referred to Gia as the role that introduced her as a real actress. But it also raised eyebrows. Jolie was just 22 at the time. The explicit nudity, full frontal scenes, lesbian love scenes, drug-induced despair, was much more racy than anything on television up to that point. Some wondered if it was appropriate, or if HBO had crossed a line. But the fact is, Gia wouldn't have been possible without that degree of vulnerability. Jolie wasn't merely naked on her body. She revealed the broken spirit of a woman lost amidst beauty and fame. And it was no small thing for Jolie either. She has since admitted that portraying Gia deeply impacted her. I lost myself in her. I had nightmares. I felt her pain. It took me a while to come back to being me. But Gia also defined her apart. It demonstrated to Hollywood that she was fearless, willing to take the path where others wouldn't, not for attention, but for art. The performance provided the foundation for a career based on intensity, complexity, and rule-breaking. Jolie's performance in Gia remains one of the bravest performances of her career. She didn't merely play the role, she was Gia, body, soul, and tattoos. Halle Berry, Monsters Ball, 2001. When Halle Berry stripped naked in Monsters Ball, she wasn't in pursuit of shock or glamour. She was laying bare pain, loss, and emotional despair, and with that, making history. In Monsters Ball, Berry plays Letitia Musgrove, a Southern woman confronting the loss of her son, the brutality of poverty, and the harsh disintegration of everything she'd ever kept together. She develops an intricate relationship with Hank, played by Billy Bob Thornton, an ex-prison guard who assisted in executing her husband. The emotional burden of this film is overwhelming, and at its heart is one unforgettable, unflinching moment. Letitia and Hank sleep together. Brawny, raw, and emotionally intense, it's a scene that shocked people. Not for what was depicted, but for how realistic it was. Berry is completely naked, but the moment isn't erotic. It's unsettling, heartbreaking, and profoundly human. Letitia's line, "Make me feel good," isn't about lust and isn't about obsession. It's about sadness. She wants to feel something other than hurt. That scene wasn't about sex. It was about two broken people crashing into each other, Berry said afterward. There was nothing sexy about it. It was about survival. Director Mark Forster demanded that the nudity be in service to the story, not for the benefit of the audience. The lights are harsh, the movement stiff, the mood close to agony. It wasn't choreographed to titillate. It was photographed to reveal emotional vulnerability, and that vulnerability was worth it. Halle Berry took home the Best Actress Academy Award in 2002, becoming the first Black woman in history to do so. Her performance wasn't only admired, it was historic. But with the glory came controversy. Some critics and members of the public wondered if Berry had won because she appeared nude. Others complained that the scene played on racial stereotypes, depicting Black women's sexuality and pain in a way that was exploitative and uncomfortable. Berry spoke to the backlash with lucidity and fortitude. "I wasn't going to let people minimize what I did. I invested everything in that role. I revealed a woman's pain, her vulnerability, her truth. That scene was of her journey, and I had to respect that." The guts it took to shoot that scene were enormous. It wasn't merely about physical nudity. It was emotional nudity. Berry stripped not only her clothes, but her soul. Monsters Ball was the career turning point. Up to that point, Berry had mostly played the attractive love interest, but this role, particularly the sex scene, destroyed that stereotype and proved she could go deep, get dark, and deliver complicated, hurtful narratives. 2 decades plus later, that scene remains one of the most sensational in movie history. Not for the nudity, but for the truth. Halle Berry didn't merely appear nude in Monsters Ball. She went whole hog, and in doing so, broke the rules for actresses forevermore. Jennifer Lawrence, No Hard Feelings, 2023. Jennifer Lawrence has never been one to play by the rules. But in No Hard Feelings, she did something that no one thought an Oscar winner would do. She went totally naked in a full frontal fight scene that left viewers gasping, giggling, and arguing over the limits of comedy and bravery. In the 2023 R-rated sex comedy No Hard Feelings, Lawrence is Maddie Barker, a hard-up woman who goes out with a socially inept teenager in exchange for a car. The movie hangs on farce, but under the farce, it touches on economic adversity, aging, and identity. And in one crazy scene, Lawrence's character skinny dips, only to find herself fighting 3 strangers stark naked. This wasn't sexy, it wasn't romantic, it was crazy. Maddie punches, kicks, and body slams assailants, all while naked on a beach at midnight. It's one of the most outrageous and controversial moments of her career. What made it all the more surprising is Lawrence didn't employ a body double. She did the whole thing herself. "It was funny to shoot," she afterward disclosed. "I was anxious, but the minute the cameras were rolling, I just gave it my all. I wasn't acting sexy. I was acting like somebody in an absurd brawl she didn't invite." That kind of dedication is not common, particularly in mainstream Hollywood comedy, where nudity, particularly female nudity, is typically hypersexualized. Lawrence turned that script on its head. She employed her nudity to emphasize ridiculousness, not seductiveness. The response was immediate. Social media went wild with memes and opinions. Some fans lauded her as fearless and funny. Others argued over whether the nudity was really needed. But for Lawrence, that was the whole point. To get people uncomfortable and then make them laugh. The critics praised her for it. In a review for The Guardian, one critic said, "Jennifer Lawrence doesn't merely get naked. She strips away the notion that nudity will always be for desire. Here, it's for chaos, comedy, and character." It also addressed a larger reality. Women in movies do not often get to be both comedic and in charge of how they're presented when nude. Lawrence wasn't an object in the scene. She was the force of nature propelling it. And let's not forget, this isn't the first time Lawrence's body has been front and center in headlines. When her private photos were hacked in 2014, she spoke out angrily about the invasion. Doing this scene in No Hard Feelings felt, in a sense, like reclaiming that control. "This time it was on my terms," she said. "That mattered to me." With No Hard Feelings, Jennifer Lawrence redefined what nudity in comedy can be: brazen, unpredictable, and completely unapologetic. It wasn't just a scene. It was a punch at Hollywood's double standards. And Lawrence served it up naked, laughing, and completely in charge. Rooney Mara, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, 2011. When Rooney Mara played Lisbeth Salander in David Fincher's The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, she did not merely change her body, she changed entirely. This was no ordinary Hollywood sex scene. It was raw, grueling, intense, and intimately connected to the fragmented self and survival of the character. Adapted from the international bestseller by Stieg Larsson, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo stars investigative reporter Michael Blomkvist, Daniel Craig, and the enigmatic computer hacker Lisbeth Salander as they unlock a 3-decade-old family mystery tainted with secrets, brutality, and corruption. Lisbeth is not a glamour-written character. She is dark, reserved, broken, and fierce. A trauma survivor who lives on her own terms and doesn't trust anyone. Rooney Mara had to shed her wholesome persona, dye her eyebrows and hair jet black, pierce her face, lose weight, and go for a cold, close to emotionless expression to be completely Lisbeth. But the body metamorphosis wasn't the biggest surprise. What surprised audiences, and critics alike, were the movie's savage, unflinching sex scenes, especially during the sexual assault and revenge sequences. One of the awful scenes involves Lisbeth raped by her legal guardian. It's awful, and the camera doesn't look away. Rooney Mara's nudity in this scene is not for titillation, it's for authenticity. It faces the viewer head-on in terms of presenting abuse to them, and how helpless and fragile she is at that time. But subsequently, in a dramatic turnabout, Lisbeth exacts savage revenge, and she does so naked once more. This time she uses her body as a weapon. She establishes supremacy, command, and justice. These scenes are not pleasant, neither are they meant to be. "I knew this wasn't a sexy role," Mara said in interviews. "It wasn't about being naked. It was about showing what Lisbeth had suffered and how she coped." The part of Lisbeth Salander was a clear risk and a reward. Rooney Mara received an Academy Award nomination for Best Actress, and reviewers were congratulating her for disappearing into the part with ghostly realism. Nudity in the film also instigated significant discussion regarding how women's trauma is represented on screen. Was it too explicit? Was it exploitative? Was it needed to portray Lisbeth's life truthfully? Mara herself was adamant. "If I was uncomfortable, I would not have done it. But I believed in David Fincher, and I believed in Lisbeth's narrative." She was not only commended for her courage, but for shifting the dialogue regarding nudity in movies. This was not sensual or aestheticized. It was authentic, it was psychological, and it was character-driven. Ultimately, Rooney Mara presented us with a Lisbeth who was both fragile and unbreakable, a woman whose body narrated a tale of violence, survival, and ultimately, empowerment. Alicia Vikander, Ex Machina, 2015. Alicia Vikander doesn't simply act a robot in Ex Machina, she inhabits one. Her Ava, a hyper-sophisticated humanoid AI, is at once mesmerizing and unnerving. The movie eschews loud action and sci-fi spectacle in favor of creeping tension, slow-burning psychological gamesmanship, and yes, nudity, to probe fundamental questions of consciousness, gender, and control. Directed by Alex Garland, Ex Machina tracks a young programmer named Caleb, Domhnall Gleeson, who's invited to Nathan's remote country estate, a tech mogul. His mission? Conduct a Turing test on Ava to see if she really has artificial intelligence. Vikander is mechanical but magnetic. She glides with hydraulic precision, speaks in soft feeling, and expresses curiosity and longing through contained emotion. Ava, however, is more than just a machine. She is learning, adjusting, changing, and observing. Ava's look changes throughout the movie. Initially, she is entirely robotic, transparent limbs, metal joints, and a cybernetic frame. As the narrative develops, we observe increasingly humanoid layers being introduced, leading up to a concluding sequence where Ava wraps herself in artificial skin, fully naked, in order to make her escape. This is one of the most haunting and evocative moments in the film. Ava, naked and wordless, prowls the sterile corridors of Nathan's laboratory, looking into mirrors, selecting clothes and skin as armor. She is building herself up, and her nudity is not sexualized, it's metaphorical. She is coming to life. "It was extremely delicate," Vikander reported, filming the naked scenes. "We discussed at great length how to represent Ava's body, not as a woman's but alien and otherworldly. The nudity in Ex Machina is intended to disturb. It forces you to look at your own sense of what's human and what's not. When Ava stands naked before Caleb, it's not an invitation, it's a challenge. She's exposing him to her power, not her seductive nature, her superiority." Interestingly, Vikander's own performance here also initiated controversy concerning how women AI are handled in film. Is Ava a victim of male creators, or is she the ultimate seductress? Her nudity fits into this tension, showing at times vulnerable and then at times totally in control. Critics hailed Vikander's performance as subtle and bold, with The Guardian dubbing her the soul of the film in a body of circuits. Her skill at mixing robot-like movements with intensely human emotion was crucial to selling Ava as believable and unsettling. Where some sci-fi movies resort to nudity for shock value or sensationalism, Ex Machina employs it to pose existential questions. If an artificial creature can want freedom and utilize her body as a vessel to obtain it, is she really conscious? Is she alive? Ultimately, Ava escapes her prison and into the world, bare, literally and figuratively, but in full control. Alicia Vikander didn't merely bare skin. She revealed what it means to build humanity from ground zero. These performances weren't necessarily about nudity. They were about risk-taking, exposing naked truths and pushing boundaries. Which of these shocked you the most or earned your respect? Share your thoughts in the comments, like this video, and remember to subscribe for more fearless Hollywood tales.